Thank you all very much for making me feel important by the use of the gavel. It did get quiet, and it was kind of a good feeling. Mostly when I saw my colleagues get quiet, I felt powerful, so thank you all. The hearing will come to order, and I thank all of you for being here. This morning, we will consider 3 pending nominations. Samuel Brown, nominee to be the VA Undersecretary for Memorial Affairs. James Baehr, nominee to be the VA General Counsel. And Richard Topping, nominee to be the VA Chief Financial Officer. Each of these roles are critically important to fulfilling the VA's mission of improving the care, benefits, and services of millions of veterans, caregivers, survivors, and beneficiaries across the country. The Undersecretary of Memorial Affairs is responsible for making certain veterans and their loved ones have a dignified final resting places and are appropriately memorialized for future generations. The VA's General Counsel is responsible for making certain the department and its employees faithfully follow the laws that Congress writes and providing legal counsel and expertise on a range of issues that impact services veterans and beneficiaries receive. And finally, the VA's Chief Financial Officer is responsible for making certain that the VA is a good steward of taxpayer dollars and well-funded for carrying out the department's sacred mission. Captain Brown, Lieutenant Colonel Baehr, Captain Topping have all served in the military themselves, and as they will explain in their testimony today, each of them have personal experience with the VA in their civilian lives. I look forward to hearing this morning's their goals, if confirmed, and working alongside Secretary Collins and Deputy Secretary Lawrence in their respective roles to raise the bar across the VA to better serve their fellow veterans. I thank you all for being here, and with that, I yield to the ranking member.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to each of the nominees for your willingness to serve and to your families for their support. As we say about our veterans, families serve as much as our men and women in uniform. The same is true of all who serve in our Veterans Affairs Department. Right at the outset, let me just say that I will join in insisting that there be no unanimous consent to any of these nominations. My colleague, Senator Gallego of Arizona, has stated that he will, in quotes, block the nominations, which means he will object to unanimous consent. I certainly intended to do the same, and I think the Senate is entitled to a full debate on each of these nominations. This committee will delve into your background, but let me just say about this process, I voted for the Secretary, Doug Collins, after his assurances about being transparent, about preserving the workforce of the VA, about putting veterans first. I've been disappointed. I think that is a vast understatement because he has failed to respond to our inquiries and questions. He has targeted 80,000 in addition to the 2,400 already fired among the VA workforce. The impacts of the rollback and the heartless, heartbreaking cuts in veteran services are already evident to many of us who were home just this past weekend. Tomorrow at a shadow hearing, as we've called it, beginning at 3 o'clock, we're going to explore some of the real-life impacts of the cuts, freezes, and firings that have occurred already. Cuts in funding, freezes in hiring, and firing of thousands of VA employees. The fact that the nominee for secretary could, in this way, in my view, so mislead us, indicates to me that we need an especially exacting and demanding process, and I am intent that we will explore as fully and completely as possible the backgrounds of every nominee for every position. Each of you will have an extraordinarily important role in the VA. Mr. Brown, if confirmed as Undersecretary for Memorial Affairs, you'll lead a department with one of the VA's most sacred missions, honoring our veterans, service members, and their families with a dignified burial and lasting memorial. I hope that you will continue the excellent leadership of your predecessor, our last Undersecretary General Matt Quinn, particularly to ensure that the National Cemetery Administration is adequately staffed and able to accomplish its mission. We have heard about the Musk-Trump assault on the VA workforce that has already apparently discouraged and driven off a number of our senior NCA officials in the field. And as a result, there may be delays in multiple months in burials and interments. You need to be fully transparent with us, with families and others, in pushing back on Secretary Collins, Elon Musk, and Donald Trump if they continue to fire or fail to hire sufficient numbers to provide the kind of service that our veterans need and deserve. Mr. Baehr, if confirmed as VA's General Counsel, you'll be the top lawyer in the department. You're going to be advising VA leadership on litigation, policy, and ethics. You're going to be working for a president who said he doesn't need to obey court orders. You have expressed to me that you believe that court orders need to be obeyed. The executive branch overreach cannot be permitted to stand if there's a disobeyance of court orders. And I will be asking you very direct questions about your adherence to the rule of law. Mr. Topping, if confirmed as Chief Financial Officer, you're going to oversee a budget that is approaching $400 billion, and it directly impacts the care and services provided for all of our nation's veterans. As we've seen, Elon Musk is pushing indiscriminate cost-cutting across all federal agencies, regardless of the consequences. This effort is not only upending lives and harming veterans, but it is incredibly short-sighted and will cost taxpayers more in the long run. The failure to prevent illness, just as an example, costs a lot more than providing the kind of care veterans need to avoid the additional expense of treatment if they become sicker. Today, we need to know whether each of you will put veterans first. I've offered legislation called Putting Veterans First that would require all of the fired veterans in all of the agencies of the federal government to be hired back, and all of the fired employees in the VA to be hired back, and to prevent anything like the blanket across-the-board firings that have occurred by requiring individual, personalized assessment of the performance of any individual who's considered for termination, and giving them appeal rights, due process, essentially. Also, this legislation would prevent the mining and collecting of data from veterans by anyone, including the Musk operation, which has been going forward. Let me just conclude by saying we're going to have this shadow hearing tomorrow with veterans who are our eyes and ears about what is actually happening. We are doing this shadow hearing because Secretary Collins has so far refused to appear before this committee. I know he has agreed at some point in the future to do so, perhaps in connection with the budget hearing. I'm looking forward to that appearance, but we need answers right away to the questions we have been asking in letters that we've written, and we need them in public so veterans can see and have some transparency and visibility into what is actually happening. The anger among our veterans community is mounting. And to quote the commander of the VFW when he appeared in the hearing before us, we need to stop the bleeding. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Ranking Member. I now recognize Senator Sullivan to introduce Captain Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Ranking Member Blumenthal. It's my honor this morning to introduce Captain Sam Brown for the position of Undersecretary of the VA for Memorial Affairs. In this committee, we often hear from American veterans who have served the United States honorably and have made countless sacrifices to protect our great nation. We hear stories of great success that make us proud. We also hear stories of heartbreak and sacrifice and tragedies of patriotic Americans sacrificing their lives for our freedoms. The Undersecretary for Memorial Affairs has the important, I would say critical responsibility of overseeing the Department of Veterans Affairs National Cemetery Administration. The National Cemetery Administration plays a central role in honoring the contributions of our service members, ensuring they receive a dignified burial with recognition of their service, providing grave sites alongside their fellow veterans, headstones and markers that tell the story of these American heroes, and the continued maintenance of these very important sites, important for all Americans. The honor we pay to our veterans in the United States is a source of great pride and an important part of our national heritage. The memorial of a veteran is a symbol of our enduring gratitude for their service and a commitment to their sacrifices that it will not be forgotten. I am very honored today to be introducing a friend, a loving husband and father of three, and proud American Army veteran who understands in the most severe way the honor and service and, yes, sacrifice of serving in our armed forces. Mr. Sam Brown is a perfect example of the selfless service and sacrifice that we admire so much in those who have served in our military. Colleagues, we have all been to funerals of fallen service members. These are somber and moving affairs that are seared into the collective memory we have as Americans for life. Many of these places in which these moving and important ceremonies take place will be under Sam Brown's leadership if he is confirmed. I can think of no one more capable and qualified to carry out the solemn responsibilities of supporting our veterans and their families at the end of their lives with compassion and dignity than Mr. Brown. Captain Brown will make an excellent Undersecretary for Memorial Affairs, managing and caring for over 4 million Americans interned at our 156 national cemeteries across the country. Captain Brown is a decorated soldier who comes from a family with a strong ethic of military service, including his very accomplished and brilliant wife, also a United States Army veteran. Like so many veterans, Mr. Brown answered the call to service after our country was attacked by terrorists after 9/11. After graduating from the United States Military Academy at West Point in 2006, Captain Brown was commissioned as an infantry officer in the United States Army, and in 2008 was deployed to Afghanistan. On this deployment, Captain Brown was severely injured in an IED attack, leaving severe burns over much of his body. His painful recovery involved over 30 surgeries. His wife, Amy, heroically nursed him back to health. In recognition of Mr. Brown's bravery and sacrifice, he was awarded the Purple Heart and Bronze Star. After being medically retired from the United States Army, Mr. Brown went on to start an innovative healthcare company which works with the VA to support the delivery of critical medications to our nation's veterans, serving a network of over 68,000 pharmacies across the country. Captain Brown's work on this venture is a great testament to his impressive leadership abilities, solutions-oriented mindset that will be of great benefit to the National Cemetery Administration and the veterans we all honor and serve. Mr. Brown's confirmation will send a clear message to our veterans and their families that their sacrifices will be respected, remembered, and honored. Captain Brown has the experience and understanding to care for our service members, to get them the dignified burial that they have earned through their service and ensure that friends and families can continue to visit their loved ones who lie in dignified and beautiful national cemeteries across our nation. I urge all of my colleagues to support the confirmation of this patriotic American who has sacrificed enormously for our nation to be the Undersecretary of Memorial Affairs. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Sullivan, thank you very much. I now recognize Senator Cassidy to introduce Lieutenant Colonel Baehr.
Thank you, Chairman Moran and Ranking Member Blumenthal. I have the privilege to introduce Lieutenant Colonel James Baehr for his nomination as General Counsel of the Department of Veterans Affairs. I also welcome his wife, Jasmine, his father, Ted, and his son, whose 4-month birthday is today. If he gives a real shout out in a second, we won't be surprised.
Future Marine, it looks like.
Currently, James serves as a military judge in the U.S. Marine Corps Reserve and on the Louisiana Veterans Affairs Commission, where he has been a great advocate for Louisiana veterans. But this just scratches the surface of an impressive career. James has served in the Marine Corps for nearly 20 years as a defense counsel, a civil affairs officer. He was deployed during Operation Inherent Resolve in Iraq as a staff officer for Lieutenant General Paul Funk. It was during his time under General Funk that James earned the Defense Meritorious Service Medal and Joint Service Achievement Medal. These accolades can speak for themselves, but having a statement of support from a general does not hurt. In a statement submitted to this committee, General Funk states that James, quote, personal leadership contributed to the superb success of our mission. This great Marine officer did what Marines do. He added clarity to chaos and competence where calamity once prevailed. In a complex operational environment, Lieutenant Colonel Baehr played a key role in shaping how our mission was seen by the outside world. His work reflected not just logistical excellence, but sound judgment and strategic insight. Off the battlefield, James prosecuted violent crime and civil corruption as a federal prosecutor in the Eastern District of Louisiana. He also clerked on the Fifth Circuit and advised President Trump on veterans issues as a special assistant to the president during the president's first term. While advising the White House, he worked to expand access to health care, improve suicide prevention measures, and better the lives of our veterans. And these are issues James knows firsthand as a veteran. He has received care at the New Orleans VA Medical Center. He's a husband who used a VA home loan to buy his home, and he's a father who transferred his GI Bill benefits to his son. We all know that our VA can do more for our veterans. That starts with having strong leadership. I'm confident that James will bring legal excellence, integrity, and a mission-first mindset to the role of General Counsel. Most of all, I know that he'll put our veterans at the forefront of every decision he makes. He has my full support. Thank you, Lieutenant Colonel, for offering yourself for service. With that, I yield.
Senator Cassidy, I thank you. And Senator Tillis, I now recognize you to introduce Captain Topping.
Thank you, Chairman, Ranking Member Blumenthal, and colleagues on the committee. It's my privilege to introduce Richard Topping, an outstanding nominee, uniquely qualified for Chief Financial Officer of the VA. The VA is a lifeline for 9 million veterans, operating the largest integrated health system in the country. With $370 billion budget, a budget that must be managed with precision and accountability. Yet last year's multi-billion-dollar budget shortfall exposed serious failures in financial oversight. The department's inability to properly forecast its needs created uncertainty for veterans, policymakers, and taxpayers alike. These kinds of missteps are inexcusable when veterans are at stake. With 25 years in healthcare, law, and finance, Richard has worked across TRICARE, Medicare, Medicaid, and the VA's community care system. As an Army JAG officer, he was a pioneer in military healthcare financing. In North Carolina, he restructured the state's failing Medicaid program, turning it into a model of fiscal responsibility and improved care for 2.7 million people in North Carolina. But beyond his resume, Richard understands this system firsthand. As a VA-enrolled veteran himself, from the early days of the Choice program, he has fought to ensure veterans can access high-quality care, whether in VA facility or in our community. I know Richard Topping and I know he's the right man for the job. I met him 17 years ago. I had more hair, and he had black hair. Fresh out of the Department of Justice, Richard had moved to Charlotte. He was the same then as he is now, eager to serve the public and qualified to make a difference. We need a decisive financial leader who will bring transparency, discipline, and reform to the VA. Richard Topping is ready to take on this challenge, and I'm proud to endorse him for the CFO role, and I urge my colleagues to support him in his nomination. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Tillis. I now would ask all three witnesses to stand and take the oath. Do you solemnly swear, would you please raise your right hands? Thank you. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give before the United States Senate Committee on Veterans Affairs will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Let the record show all three witnesses answered in the affirmative. Please be seated. Captain Brown, we will begin with you. Thank you for your presence here today and your interest in service, and feel free to introduce your family as part of your testimony. And you're recognized now for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman Moran, Ranking Member Blumenthal, and thank you for inviting me to testify before this committee today. Senator Sullivan, thank you for your service in uniform and for your gracious introduction. I also want to acknowledge and thank my wife, Amy Brown, who is not here this morning because she actually has a VA appointment and told me she won't be able to watch the hearing as she's having labs drawn. She is a combat veteran, the mother of our 3 children, and the woman who loved me when I didn't believe it was possible for anyone to see beyond my horrific scars in the months after being wounded. She is more than a spouse. Amy is my best friend and is a hero to me. I must also thank President Trump for nominating me to lead the National Cemetery Administration. As I hope you will hear and understand through my testimony today, this is a sacred duty and a commitment our nation must uphold to our service members and veterans who gave a portion, or in some cases, all of their life in service to the rest of us. It is humbling to be before you, a committee that leads the United States Senate in bipartisan work, that delivers life-changing legislation like the VA Accountability and Whistleblower Protection Act, the Mission Act, and the PACT Act. It is equally humbling to be considered as someone who will lead the National Cemetery Administration, which has a legacy of honoring our veterans and the families it serves with distinction and boasts an impeccable record of customer service. I am the son and grandson of veterans. I was raised in a family where we were expected to join the military after high school. My journey down that path began just months after our nation was attacked on September 11th, 2001. I was accepted to the United States Military Academy at West Point and reported for training and my education less than a year after those attacks. My family members walked that path alongside me. My father, 2 younger brothers, and my wife all deployed to Afghanistan or Iraq. I lost a soldier as a result of the roadside bomb at the same time I received my wounds that still scar me to this day. I lost friends in Afghanistan and Iraq. I even lost my closest brother to suicide as a result of the unseen wounds from traumatic brain injury sustained in combat operations over the course of his 3 deployments to Helmand, Afghanistan. I've devoted my life to this country and its veterans, both in uniform and after I was medically retired. I've worked for and with veteran service organizations. I've run a company that provides the Department of Veterans Affairs with emergency or urgent care pharmaceutical services for our veterans. And the VA has been my primary health care provider for 13 years since I was retired from the Army. As a result, I commit to you that if confirmed, I will always put veterans and their families at the center of everything I lead. The greatest lesson I learned in uniform came to me on that fateful day in the desert of Afghanistan on September 2008. As I lay face down in the dirt and dust, covered in flames from the top of my head to midway down my legs, I reached a significant point in my life. I finally faced my own humanity and realized that I could not save my own life. Isolated and alone, in my own living nightmare, I cried out to my Creator, Jesus Christ, and my mother. I had 3 thoughts in this moment. I wondered how long it will take to burn to death. I pondered the transition from this life to the next and what it was going to be like. And then I made the conscious decision to give up the will to live. A version of me died in that moment. I was reborn when I heard the voice of my gunner scream out, "Sir, I've got you." After smothering the flames that burned my body, his words gave me the miracle of hope. That hope rescued me, and was the start of a journey that brings me here before you today. That message of hope that I received on the battlefield is one that the National Cemetery Administration delivers every day to the families and loved ones who are left wondering if they can go on with their lives after losing a cherished person who served this country. When that day arrives, the National Cemetery Administration is there to tell those family members and loved ones, we've got you. I understand this responsibility and sacred duty to fulfill President Lincoln's promise to care for those who have served in our nation's military and for their families, caregivers, and survivors. That's why I sit before you today to ask you to support my nomination to become the next Undersecretary for Memorial Affairs. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Mr. Brown, thank you for your very meaningful testimony. Lieutenant Colonel Baehr.
Chairman Moran, Ranking Member Blumenthal, honorable members of this committee, it is the honor of my life to appear before you today as the nominee for General Counsel of the Department of Veterans Affairs and to tell you about my commitment to my fellow veterans. I am profoundly grateful to President Trump for this nomination and to Secretary Collins for his confidence in my ability to fulfill this role. If confirmed, I pledge to continue to uphold my lifelong commitment to the Constitution and to devote myself fully to the Department's sacred mission to care for our veterans, their families, caregivers, and survivors. I am blessed to have some of my family in attendance. My father is here, who has always taught me to pursue service over self. My mother is here too, in spirit, though she passed away several years ago. She taught me to never give up on your impossible dreams. My brother is here with his family. He's taught me what it means to be loyal to a comrade and to a brother, and many friends are here as well. And most importantly, my wife, Jasmine, is here, and our newborn son, James, who is 4 months old today. I cannot thank my wife enough for the sacrifices she has made to support my many endeavors, and that she will continue to make should I be confirmed. And it is my hope that my son would want to choose the path of military service that has been the most important and noble decision I have made in my life, and someday that he would be blessed to call himself an American veteran. I was an incoming freshman when terrorists attacked the World Trade Center. I was 19 years old when I ran into an officer selection officer in the dining hall of Dartmouth College who changed my life. He asked me if I wanted to go to officer candidate school that summer. I had no business going to Quantico. I had no family service tradition. I was a nerd, but I couldn't shake the conviction that I should go, I should serve. And I said yes to that officer selection officer. I went to Quantico, and when I graduated, I was blessed to become a Marine. After law school at UVA, I was blessed to serve as a judge advocate, defending my fellow Marines at Camp Pendleton, California. After active duty, I took a clerkship in New Orleans on the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. I was then hired as a federal prosecutor and served in the Department of Justice for years under presidents of different parties. I remained in the Marine Corps Reserve, serving as a civil affairs team leader and then deploying to Iraq in 2018 during the fight against ISIS. When I returned from Iraq, I experienced firsthand that sense of dislocation that so many veterans feel after coming home from the intensity of deployment to the civilian world. And that is an experience I will take with me to the role of General Counsel, if confirmed. It was around this time that the opportunity arose to enter a different mission, to become a key policy advisor to President Trump on veterans issues in his first administration. I worked closely with VA and many of the dedicated staffers in this room to improve veteran access to health care, increase accountability at VA, and address veteran mental health and suicide. I'm proud of the bipartisan accomplishments that we achieved with the support and help of this committee and President Trump. After the administration, I returned to litigation to fight public impact constitutional cases, representing litigants challenging government overreach and service member families impacted by government negligence. I continue to serve in the military reserves, upholding the law as a military trial judge. I would take all of these experiences with me in my service to veterans at the Department of Veterans Affairs. I'm not just a nominee, my life is entwined with the VA. As Senator Cassidy said, I received care at our beautiful New Orleans VA Medical Center. My family purchased our home through a VA home loan guarantee, and I've transferred my GI Bill that the VA administers to my son. I serve as an appointed commissioner on our state's Veterans Affairs Commission. I have a deep appreciation for the challenges the department faces and the urgent need to ensure that veterans receive the highest level of service that they have earned. And you have my wholehearted commitment to uphold the oath of the Constitution that I swore as a Marine and as a prosecutor, and to place the veteran at the center of all that I do. The decisions the General Counsel makes are not just books of the law. They're decisions that impact the lives of veterans every day, and I will never forget that. If confirmed, I will work tirelessly to advance principles of accountability, integrity, and mission accomplishment in the Office of General Counsel. Firstly, accountability. The first lesson of Marine Corps leadership is that you are responsible for everything that happens or fails to happen under your command. I will take responsibility for my actions and those of my office. Second, integrity. I will fully commit to faithfully interpret the law and provide the Secretary the best legal counsel so the office operates with trust and credibility. And third, mission accomplishment. Making certain that my office is never the obstacle to impede VA from delivering the care, benefits, and services that veterans have earned in a timely fashion. I'm humbled by this opportunity to continue serving my fellow veterans. If confirmed, I will work tirelessly to support the Secretary and this committee in delivering on the promise made to every veteran and to secure that promise for the veterans who will come after us. Thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today, and I look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you for your testimony. I recognize Captain Topping.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ranking Member Blumenthal, thank you, Senator Tillis, and distinguished members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today. It's a profound honor to be nominated for this role. I am deeply committed to the mission of the VA, and if confirmed, will work to ensure that our veterans, families, caregivers, and survivors receive the care and benefits that they have earned. I am deeply grateful to President Trump and Secretary Collins for their confidence in me. I'm grateful to the members of this committee for considering me to serve our great nation alongside the men and women who are dedicated to delivering on one of America's most sacred promises. Over the last few weeks, I've had the opportunity to meet with several members of the committee and your staffs. I've appreciated the direct, candid input and guidance about your priorities and opportunities for how we can fulfill our shared commitment to veterans. Our meetings were an affirmation of the singular importance of the mission and the critical role to which I will be entrusted if confirmed. I am an Army veteran, and for the past 20 years, which is all of my adult life after completing my military service, I have been a beneficiary of the VA. I have grown up with VA as a constant support and resource. VA has provided for me and my family in ways both small and large, from simple primary care checkups to the VA loan that allowed me to purchase our family home, to the programs that will be there for me as I age and my needs become more complex. Just about the only thing in my life that has not changed over the past 20 years has been the VA. But it's not just me. My grandfathers, the first in their families to receive college educations, did so through the GI Bill. Both were World War II veterans, one Navy, one Army, so just about the only thing they agreed on was the importance of the VA and giving them their first chance to succeed. My younger sister, who became life-threateningly ill in Iraq, received almost all of her post-military care and support from VA. And while she ultimately passed from her illness, my family and I personally experienced the life-sustaining care VA provided her. And finally, the newest VA enrollment in my family is not my son. He's too young, and with his early aptitude for engineering, I'm quite worried that he's headed to the Navy. No, my family's newest VA enrollee is my father. A Vietnam-era veteran, he has both Medicare and private coverage through my mother's retirement as a public school teacher. But even with that coverage, he still struggled to find specialized hearing care related to his military service with jet engines. So he turned to the VA. He applied, was rated, enrolled, and received incredible specialty care in a matter of months. It was care that only the VA could provide. The commitment that our nation made to my father decades ago was there when he needed it. While VA has cared for me and my family, I have been lucky in my career to be able to care for others. For more than 2 decades, I've had the opportunity to work in the government and private sector with the nation's largest healthcare programs, TRICARE, Medicare, Medicaid, Marketplace, and VA's own community care. All of these programs are complex. Funding can be difficult. Capabilities often lag requirements, and programs must constantly evolve to meet the needs of the individuals they are intended to serve. That work can often be financially, operationally, and politically challenging. But through these experiences, I've developed a strong understanding of the complexities and responsibilities involved in leading large organizations and managing complex financial systems. The more critical an organization's mission, the more critical its accountability. As CFO, I will use my experience, skills, and leadership to coordinate and enhance VA's financial systems, ensure that taxpayer dollars are used effectively and transparently, and to maximize financial operations across the agency. My focus will be on enhanced financial reporting, improved budget forecasting and management, and ensuring the continued modernization of VA's financial infrastructure and technology. If confirmed, I will work with the Secretary, this committee, VA's incredible career staff, my fellow appointees, and the many other stakeholders who embrace the responsibility to care for veterans. I am honored to be nominated to serve an organization that has done so much for me and for my family. May God bless all those who have fought and sacrificed for this great nation. I am forever grateful. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am prepared to respond to any questions you and the committee may have.
Mr. Topping, I thank you and the other two witnesses. I thank you for your service, and we will now begin an opportunity for members of this committee to ask you questions. Mr. Baehr, I'd like to start with you. First of all, I'd ask you to give General Funk my regards. He served at Fort Riley in 1st Infantry Division and at Fort Leavenworth in Training and Doctrine Command, and I hold him in the highest regard. First of all, this committee often finds our requests for information waiting for the Office of the OGC to provide us with that answer. Can you commit to me that you'll do everything you can to see that this committee gets the information that we request in a timely fashion?
Yes, sir. I think the oversight function of this committee is absolutely essential in our constitutional structure. I never want the Office of General Counsel to be the impediment to you receiving information that you require to do that job.
Thank you. You have mentioned the Constitution in your statement several times and just now. And my question to you is, are there any circumstances you would recommend to the Secretary to disobey an order of the court or disregard any court decision or ruling?
Absolutely not, sir. As a military judge myself, I understand the importance of our courts in our constitutional system and the importance of following the Constitution and the court's orders.
I thank you for that answer. And now let me turn to you, Mr. Topping. In 2017, a North Carolina state auditor found that while you served as the chief executive officer of Cardinal Innovations, a mental health care organization, you overspent on administration and contracting to include your salary, as well as excessive expenditures on cars, credit yards, social gatherings, travel bonuses for employees, and explore business opportunities outside the company's core mission. The audit was followed by your departure. Would you please explain these circumstances from your point of view, where the ongoing litigation currently stands, and why the Senate and the American people should put their faith in you with financial management at the Department of Veterans Affairs in light of these allegations?
Senator, thank you so much for the question. In my 25 years in this business, every single independent financial audit that I've ever been a participant in or accountable for has resulted in a clean audit opinion attesting to the accuracy of the financial statements of my company. What you're referring to is the North Carolina program audit. That was a political audit by an elected Democrat who was opposed to the work that my company and I were doing to implement Governor McCrory's Medicaid reform. The allegations she made were false. They were misleading. I said so at the time. I corrected the record. You can read my response in the report. And the allegations that then led to frivolous litigation have since been dismissed. The litigation that I filed to defend myself resulted in a $500,000 defamation judgment in my favor. And after the auditor made these false, misleading, and according to the court, defamatory statements, she was indicted for misuse of public funds, pled guilty, and was removed from office. I am confident that my business record and her criminal record speak for themselves.
Thank you for that answer. I recognize Senator Bloom.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Brown, as you know, the NCA consistently ranks high, in fact, perhaps highest among all government agencies in terms of customer satisfaction. It is a sacred mission that the NCA performs. I'm deeply concerned about the projected firing of 80,000 members of the VA workforce, including potentially NCA employees. Will you commit to this committee that you will stand up against firing any of the NCA employees who are important to fulfilling its mission?
Thank you, Senator. What I can commit to you is that the mission will always be first. When I was in the Army, we had a motto that no mission too difficult, no sacrifice too great, duty first. In this case, the veteran is the mission, and everything that the Secretary has spoken about publicly, he has stated as much. So to the extent that the mission of NCA, which is to honor the lives of our veterans, their family members to ensure that they are properly memorialized. That is my focus, and I will do everything I can to make sure that that mission is never impeded.
So you will stand up to any cuts that are made or hiring freezes?
Senator, I don't yet know exactly how the field operations are conducted. And so what I can tell you is the mission will never suffer if confirmed under my leadership.
Mr. Baehr, let me ask you, apparently there's a policy we've heard that requires VBA employees to first contact the office of their superiors for permission, that is political leadership, before they talk to the Office of General Counsel. In other words, they have to get permission from the political leadership before talking to the Office of General Counsel. Would you oppose that kind of policy?
Thank you, Senator. My goals would be accountability and communication, making sure that the Office of General Counsel provides consistent advice. I'm not there now, and I don't know all the details of the policy, but my goal would be to efficiently provide responses across the enterprise, for the entire client base, which is the Department of Veterans Affairs and the veterans that we serve.
Wouldn't you agree that VA employees should be free to talk to the Office of General Counsel without first seeking permission from the political leadership?
Sir, in general, I think communication is vital. I do think it's important that it occur in an organized fashion, so that employees aren't providing one piece of advice to one person and one piece of advice to another that's distinct or different. So my goals would be to achieve communication in an organized fashion. In terms of other concerns, such as, for example, whistleblower issues or retaliation, we have a special structure at the VA that permits those folks to go to the Office of Accountability and Whistleblower Protection and other places to pursue those.
Well, I think that's a complicated answer to a question that could be answered very simply, that employees should be free to seek legal advice on issues before they take action that might violate the law. Wouldn't you agree with that as a very simple proposition?
Yes, sir. As a general proposition, I would agree with that.
I know that I and a number of my colleagues on both sides of the aisle have been frustrated in the past with how long the VA takes to promulgate rules and implement policy. Will you commit to try to speed the timelines for that purpose?
Absolutely, sir. I think that's one of the most important missions that the office does in terms of its role in regulatory guidance, in rulemaking. I will set rigorous metrics to increase our efficiencies and ensure that our team rapidly accomplishes the mission for the service of our veterans. I know there are a lot of important rules that you and others have proposed, and I would look forward to the opportunity to help the office increase efficiency in that role.
Mr. Topping, you said that in connection with the audit that the chairman mentioned that it was done by I'm not going to use your words exactly, by a political appointee, or was politically motivated. What's the basis for that statement?
She's an elected Democratic official.
But I'm a Democratic elected official, and I'm asking you questions. That's not necessarily a political exercise.
Yeah,
The
Senator,
mere fact that he was an elected Democratic official doesn't make it a political inquiry or witch hunt. What's the basis for your statement that it was politically motivated?
Senator, thanks for the question. And again, as an elected Democrat, she was opposed to the work that we were doing to implement the Republican governor's Medicaid reform. And all of this was related to the same issue in North Carolina, which was the fight over Medicaid managed care. And there were two sides to that. There were those of us that felt the system was broken, that it was not serving patients, and that it needed to be fixed. There were those that felt we didn't need to fix anything. We could simply flood the system with billions of dollars of new Medicaid expansion money and provide support to the political supporters in the process. The choice was very clear: patients or politics. I picked patients. And if confirmed in this position, and I find myself in a situation where I need to choose between veterans and politics, I will choose veterans.
My time has expired. I have some additional questions. Maybe my colleagues will cover them on this issue. Thanks for your response.
Senator Cassidy.
Lieutenant Colonel Baehr, In your pre-hearing responses, you stated that you would prioritize timely access to benefits for veterans and updating electronic systems for a more efficient VA. There was somebody sitting there at a previous hearing, and I asked about using artificial intelligence, and he said, well, we're getting there. And I said, well, how are you getting there? He goes, we're using optical character resolution to convert printed documents to something that could be a PDF and reviewed by people at home. And I remember doing that 20 years ago when I was way back when, before I was in politics. And so I don't really consider that modernization. I consider that kind of almost Stone Age application of technology. Now, I lead into that because one thing that would be modern, if you will, is to use artificial intelligence to significantly speed up the processing of veteran benefits claims. Backlogs would be gone very quickly if we had a large language model with a human in the loop, making sure that the decision was right and just. And it would also lower cost. I mean, it's just like better for the veterans, lowers cost. I could go on. So I've been told that currently the VA does not have a roadmap how to incorporate AI into its modernization and has not yet developed formal policy guidance to support the use of AI technologies in the Veterans Benefit Administration. So, long introduction, asking you to commit to working with this committee to make such a roadmap, including appropriate timelines, to incorporate AI capabilities to modernize benefit applications and claims review, and to speed up and improve how veterans are served. And by the way, to also look to make sure that if there's any fraud or anything inappropriate applications, to also be rooted out. I'm kind of begging the answer, but I'm hoping to get the answer.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Senator Cassidy. In terms of AI, I think I would turn to what the Deputy Secretary said in terms of its ability to assist with claims development. Senator King obviously asked about that and raised some concerns about the ultimate decision maker being a human being. So I would certainly defer to the Deputy Secretary and to the Secretary's vision. I do see a tremendous opportunity for technology, and to the extent that my legal counsel can help us move more efficiently in any component of the department, I would certainly be eager to look into that.
There has to be a human in the loop, but when you look at months and years delay, and sometimes people dying before a decision is made, there's got to be some improvement. And to put our head in the sand and say that this is not a technology which could serve the veterans better is putting the head in the sand. I accept that you will defer to your superior, but I would urge that once that superior decides to do this, boom, you just come back and talk to us. Mr. Topping, you've mentioned several ways the Veterans Administration is struggling to provide quality health care to veterans, administrative complexities, and insufficient capabilities leading to long wait times. My bipartisan Vet PAC Act with Senator Hirona would create an independent policy advisory commission of medical experts and veterans to review critical areas of the VHA to improve patient care. And the VA has said that they support this legislation. So again, I'm begging the answer because I'm tipping my hand. But I guess what is your attitude towards an expert-driven third-party review of the VHA, including budget management operations, and would that go to help improving the concerns you outlined?
Senator, I think the Secretary said his confirmation here as part of putting veterans at the center of everything we do is improving the opportunities they have to receive care. One of the things that we can certainly do at VHA that is done in the rest of healthcare is bring in the programs, bring in the process, bring in the expertise that exists elsewhere, not just inside VHA. There are tremendous opportunities to learn from these other healthcare programs, not the least of which is TRICARE, sitting over at DOD, and we'll bring some of those in, get the advice, and implement those programs at VA. So that's certainly something, pending the Secretary's engagement, that I'd be interested in following up on.
You know, utilization review and prior authorization has a little bit of a bad name, but when done appropriately, it keeps inappropriate care from being performed. And right now, at least last time I had asked, VA does not have that, meaning that if a patient goes to an outside setting, she or he may end up with inappropriate care. And if I'm a doctor, so if you do too many procedures, inevitably you get a complication. So in our desire to make sure that the veteran has what she or he needs, but not more than what he or she needs, I'd ask you to also look at that.
Senator, I will, and I'm going to plus one you on that. It's the med management, utilization management, but also the care coordination that really drives that as well, too, as you well know.
Amen, brother. Totally. Okay, I yield.
Senator Murray.
First of all, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you all for being here today. I think you all agree that we as a country make a sacred oath to our veterans to take care of them when they return home. And you are asking to be part of that system. Mr. Baehr, I remember when we met a few weeks ago, you talked about you just transferred your VA education benefits to your son. I was really glad to hear that because you, as a veteran, earned that benefit through your service. And in fact, all of our veterans deserve access to the benefits they earned through their service. So you can imagine why I and many of us are very concerned about Trump's plan now to fire over 80,000 VA employees and how that would seriously disrupt veterans being able to access not just their, obviously, education benefits, but their disability benefits, their health care, home loan benefits, all of that they've earned. So, Mr. Baehr, I wanted to ask you, do you support those widespread cuts across the VA?
Senator, as you know, I'm not at the VA and have had no role in any of those choices or decisions. As an individual who uses VA myself, of course, I want to ensure that we have the best services and benefits. I also, as a veteran, want to see the VA improve, and I think this entire committee does as well. So I would review the law, and I would advise the Secretary on following a legal path and pursuing his vision for putting the veteran at the center of all that we do, if confirmed.
Do you think that firing 80,000 people will make it more or less difficult for veterans to get access?
I have not looked at the situation myself, Senator, and I don't know what the, I've just read the public reporting on it. I understand there's some exempt positions. The Secretary said that he's focused on care for veterans and making sure veterans don't lose care or benefits. So I don't know, where those opportunities for efficiency or not exist in the system. My role, if confirmed, would be to ensure that everything we do is lawful and compliant with Title V, Title 38, and other rules and regulations, and provide
This committee over the years has often discussed wait times, people not getting access. That has really increased in the last month or so from our veteran community, and it takes people to process. It takes somebody there to talk to. So I would just remind all of us that this is a people organization, and if we fire 80,000 people, it's going to be really challenging and difficult, if not impossible, for our veterans to get the care and benefits that they've earned. I kind of just referenced this, but this committee has worked to pass a lot of really important pieces of legislation that require vital changes at the VA. That includes the Caregivers Program that I passed when I was chair of this committee, the Deborah Sampson Act, and of course the PACT Act, which just passed recently. During Secretary Collins' nomination hearing, he testified that he agreed with providing vital health care and benefits to veterans, and we have to get it right. However, I just have to say I have really serious concerns that this administration now is picking and choosing which laws to follow, which means not living up to the promises we have made to our veterans and really ignoring the intent of Congress. For example, we know that VA is doing a review to determine whether it is fully compliant with the Mission Act, but not reviewing the compliance with any other piece of legislation. Mr. Topping, let me just start with you. Is the PACT Act less important than the Mission Act?
Senator, I think all the legislation passed by this Congress is important.
Do you think VA should pick and choose which laws to follow?
Senator, I think like any organization with limited resources, time, capabilities, there's always a prioritization. None is more or less important, but I think what the Secretary said he's doing is he is focused on maximizing efficiency, redeploying those resources so that they are front-facing and mission-essential to veterans, and ensuring that the veteran remains at the center of everything that we do. I'm not there. I'm not exactly sure how the prioritization works, but I understand what the Secretary has articulated his goals to be.
Mr. Baehr, do you think that the VA should pick and choose which laws to follow?
Senator, I believe the VA should follow all the laws, and if confirmed, I would advise the Secretary on how he can fulfill his role in the best course of action with all the laws and regulations that are passed by Congress.
I just have a few seconds left, and I wanted to ask you, Mr. Baehr, do you believe it's legal for DOGE to have access to veterans' personal information?
Senator, I, again, am not at VA and I'm not familiar with what is going on. I'm just operating on what I've read in the public news. And there are, as the Deputy Secretary said in his hearing, there are significant protections for veterans' information. All three veterans before you, our information is in VA. So we're certainly sympathetic. I don't want anyone looking at my podiatry records or other
Personal, financial,
embarrassing
health,
items.
all of that.
Right.
So if the department is given directives by DOGE or by the White House that you believe are illegal, will you follow those directives?
Senator, as I said before to Senator Moran's, I will always pursue the Constitution and follow the laws. I don't believe I'll be given illegal directives, but I will always follow the law.
Thank you.
We've known each other for 10 years. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And congratulations to all of you for your nomination. I intend to support your confirmation. Mr. Topping, it was about 3 years ago, we had some VA administrators in this very room to talk about the PACT Act implementation. I voted against the PACT Act. I was one of about 8 or 9 people that did because I didn't think it was the plumbing for getting it right had been done by Congress. The problem is we had a president who was pressing Congress to move forward, and we had a Democrat chair who decided to move forward in spite of a promise to get the plumbing right. Now, and I said at that time, I said, we're probably, I think my exact quote was about 18 or 24 months from now, you could have a real crisis in terms of people, technology, infrastructure to actually support the will of Congress. That's where we are now. The shortfall that we had announced last year, the shortfall that's ahead of us, the headwinds that you had ahead of us that are driven purely by the PACT Act implementation not being thought out, it's going to be a big task for you. How are you going to go about making sure that we address the fiscal crisis that Congress imposed on you all and ensure we get the budget right and we do not have a continued impact on VA care, which I do believe we are right now as a result of the PACT Act? Not against the policy, against the but concerned with the implementation.
Senator, you have been remarkably consistent on this issue for as long as I've known, and I know as a consultant, I've known you long enough to know, too, that you're tough on this because you know what the right answer is. If confirmed, my priorities as CFO will be financial reporting and analytics, budget forecasting and management, financial infrastructure and technology. And that's going to require getting the right teams and expertise, the org structure that drives controls and accountability, and having the right process and tools in place. Having said that, I will follow the appropriations as they are made by the Congress, but the idea would be to have maximum efficiency, maximum capability, and maximum flexibility so that we move the dollars accountable for every single one, but move them around to best meet the mission and ensure we are following the Secretary's guidance to put the veteran at the center of everything that we do.
Now, on its face, Mr. Topping, do you think an electronic health record, I get the size and the scope of the VA, and I get the complexity of the VISNs, and I get the complexity of an application portfolio that's exploded, and everybody's using Excel spreadsheets, Access database, whatever they are to make ends meet, and there's a lot of variation out there. It's a complex legacy environment that they were going into. But can you imagine what we have done to spend over $10 billion on an electronic health record implementation in the VA, crossing Republican and Democrat administrations? What on earth can we possibly do to get that under control? And in your role, the fiscal implications of a multi-billion-dollar electronic health record system that hasn't yet been fully implemented over, what is it now, 5 or 6 years? That seems like it should be an indicator on your first day in office, one of a failure of implementation. Again, I'm not criticizing the Biden administration any more than I am when it started in the Trump administration. Some way this project went sideways. When you're confirmed, can you commit to me that you will look at this through the lens, through your responsibilities as CFO, and come up with a start, stop, continue on a program that should have been finished by now?
Senator, I absolutely can commit to that, and I understand that enterprise IT implementations are difficult everywhere. It's tough in the private sector, it's tough in the public sector. VA is big, but this has been done before and everywhere else.
My guess is it was a failed implementation where we said yes too many times, and we did not document all the changes that were used to accommodate what was largely a customizable, off-the-shelf system that should have had maximum compatibility with the Department of Defense. It's the same platform. We're whiffing on it, and that is preventing us from having that seamless transition of data across the whole of VA to make sure that we have every piece of information we need on veterans to give them the best care possible. So once you're confirmed, I'd like for you to get that on your radar because it's bleeding, and we've got to fix it. Mr. Baehr, I want to tell you, I noticed little baby James cried a minute ago, and it reminds me of what I've told a lot of people having 2 kids in these sort of formal settings and having to take them out really quickly. There is nothing more beautiful than the sound of someone else's baby crying. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Tillis. Senator Hassan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Senator Tillis, that is what my mother used to say to me at 5 o'clock in the morning when it was my baby who was crying, and she could roll over and go back to sleep. Good morning, and thank you all for your service. Congratulations on your nominations, and congratulations to your family as well, because this is a family affair, both your service to your country and these nominations and your future service. Mr. Baehr has already, Lieutenant Colonel Baehr has already answered this question, but to you, Mr. Brown, and to you, Mr. Topping, I just want to get a straightforward, simple question answered. If directed by the President to take action that would break the law, would you follow the law or follow the President's directive?
Senator, thank you for the question. I cannot imagine a scenario where the President would ask me to do anything unlawful, but my oath is to the Constitution.
And Captain Topping.
Similar answer. I can't imagine the President would ask me to break the law, but I'll follow the law.
Both of you, I'll just say the fact that you say you can't imagine it is disappointing. It's a lack of imagination given the President's record and what he's done in his first 3 months in office. But let me go on now. Captain Topping, I wanted to follow up on a question. Let me also, Captain Brown and Captain Topping, if a court issues an order requiring the Department of Veteran Affairs to take or refrain from taking specific actions, will you follow the court's order, Captain?
Senator, I will always follow the law, including court orders.
Captain Topping.
Senator, absolutely the same. My commitment.
Now I want to follow up on what a question Senator Blumenthal was talking to you about, Captain Topping. You talked about what you referred to as a politically motivated audit and that you were exonerated and the person who charged you with misconduct or wrongdoing was found guilty of defamation. And those are compelling facts. But in Senator Blumenthal's follow-up to you, you talked about what constituted political motivation, and the way you talked about it really concerned me. So I'm about to ask all 3 of you a question about the VA's plan to fire 80,000 employees, even as we are enrolling more and more veterans. And just for context, I'm a former governor. I have overseen reorganizations and layoffs. I understand what it is to balance a budget. I understand difficult decisions sometimes have to be made. But do you think my concern about the firing of 80,000 veterans as we are expanding, employees at the VA, as we are expanding services, is a good faith policy concern? Or is my growing concern about these firings going to be just dismissed by you as political because I'm in a different political party?
Senator, I'll go first on that. Again, I'm not at VA and haven't been part of the conversations.
This is about whether people of different political parties in the United States of America can have legitimate good faith differences of opinion, and whether we're going to engage each other believing in our good faith, or whether you are going to dismiss anybody who is a Democrat as just being politically motivated. So what is it? Are you going to be able to engage with us in good faith policy questions, or are you just going to dismiss everybody on this side of the dais or any other Democrat because we're Democrats?
Senator, I absolutely welcome the political debate, the discourse, the difference of opinions.
These can be policy debates, not even political ones. This is the VA. This is a bipartisan committee.
Yes, ma'am. And let me give you what my approach to this issue would be. And again, bringing a corporate perspective on this. It's what I know publicly. What I know publicly is what the Secretary has done is to say, we're on a GAO high-risk list since 2015. VA needs reform, and that is a bipartisan
I'm going to
agreement.
stop you there because my time is limited, and I want to get to the question of these layoffs. But I would like you to reflect on the fact that when people have good faith policy debates in the United States of America, it does not mean that all we care about is politics, especially when we are talking about veterans. We have veterans on both sides of the aisle here. I'm the daughter of a World War II veteran. And the last thing on my mind right now is politics. And I hope you can take that to heart. Now, I do want to ask you about the firing of the plans to lay off or fire 80,000 folks at the VA. The administration has recklessly fired VA employees, pausing hiring at the VA, and undermined established contracts, all actions that I believe will harm veterans' care and benefits. Going forward, the Trump administration plans to fire 80,000 employees, something that the Secretary has publicly acknowledged. In 2022, more veterans became eligible for health care and benefits under the PACT Act, and I'm going to differ a little bit with Senator Tillis. We didn't do it because the president wanted it. We did it because veterans in this country rightly demanded it. It was well past due. So the VA subsequently hired more employees to support these veterans. Now President Trump and Elon Musk want to fire those employees. So just in a recent hearing, I asked VA Assistant Secretary Engelbaum if he could guarantee that veterans would not be negatively affected by President Trump's plan to fire these VA employees. He couldn't provide me a satisfactory answer, so now I'll ask the three of you, and I'm running a little bit over time, so just yes or no answers. Do you support the administration's plan to fire nearly 1/5 of VA's workforce, including many employees who are themselves veterans? Captain Brown.
Senator, thank you for that question, and I just would like to say that in the spirit of good faith policy concerns, that I think that we owe it to the Secretary in good faith to hear his full plan, which none of us have heard yet, and know that he is putting veterans first. And
So I will take that as you can't guarantee it, Lieutenant Colonel.
Senator, I think some of these issues are under active litigation and going to the Supreme Court now, so it would be improper, I believe, for me to comment personally on it.
Again, you can't guarantee that it's not going to impact veterans' care. Captain Topping.
Senator, I understand the policy concern and the debate, and I would approach this by looking at what is the process, how is it being done, why, and then what's the outcome.
And I thank you, Mr. Chair, for your indulgence. I will submit the rest of this portion of my questions for the record. I'm just going to say this, that if you want buy-in from everybody on this, the department needs to have transparency and needs to indicate how they are going to guarantee that veterans' care will not be delayed, that appointments will not be delayed, and that the processing of claims will not be delayed. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Baehr, I want to congratulate all the nominees again and appreciate your service, both in the military and wanting to do this. Mr. Baehr, I need your commitment to work on an issue that I'm sure will anger you as much as it's angered me. This is the Camp Lejeune, Act, where we passed here compensation for Marines who served at Camp Lejeune because of the contaminated water for them and their families. And I tried really hard and the Biden administration wanted us to, and that was their advice, to put caps on contingency fees. So most of the money would go to the Marines, not to trial lawyers. Okay, we couldn't get that done. I'm not going to accuse anybody here, but there's a lot of politics. You want to talk about politics. So you saw all these ads, and we've all seen them. By the way, it's in the billions of dollars of ads. Okay, these law firms saying, "Hey, sick Marine, you need help? We'll help you." Okay, my team investigates this. Some of these law firms, I won't name them, I've named a lot publicly, they charge these Marines and their families 60%, 65%, 70% contingency fees. It's disgusting. Everybody knows about this. I raise this all the damn time. I couldn't get my amendments through. People blocked them. I won't go into the politics, but let's just say there's a lot of politics here. okay? Disgusting. I've never seen an issue, 10 years in the U.S. Senate, that called out for more justice. You're either enriching trial lawyers and screwing the Marines and their families, or you're helping the Marines and their families. So I went to the Attorney General of the United States, Merrick Garland. To his credit, he worked with me because I made a suggestion, hey, at least we can cap these fees at the Federal Tort Claims Act limits. He said, came back to me 2 weeks later. I really appreciate the Attorney General. Senator, you're right. We agree with you. 25%, which is way too high for litigation, 20% for filing. He made an announcement saying, law firms in America, if you're charging more than that, you'll be subject to civil or criminal penalties. This is Biden's Attorney General. So here's the commitment I need. These law firms are still doing these ads. They're still ripping off. I mean, think about it. It's like a zero-sum game. We're either getting these, and a lot of these firms are really, really, really rich, enriching these guys more, or sick Marines and their families. Which one do you think should be getting the money?
Thank you, sir. I think the issue of representation and making sure that folks have aggressive representation, helping them and helping them to get their money is important, and the VA has...
Okay, you're getting ready to lose my vote here. That's the wrong answer. The Marines are the ones who need the money,
sir.
right?
I was going to say
You
that.
and I need to talk, because you just, boy, oh boy, that's the wrong answer.
I'm sorry, sir. I wasn't meaning to
The right
disagree. I was
answer is
agreeing
here's what I need a commitment from you on. Attorney General Bondi has already said she's going to do this, okay? The Secretary of the Navy is already, all we want is an implementation of what Merrick Garland said he was going to do. Can I get your commitment to do that?
You have my commitment to look at any legislation you support.
No, I'm
and provide-
talking about what the Attorney General of the United States already said is the law, right? This comes under the Federal Tort Claims Act, okay? Will you work with the Attorney General of the United States, the current one, not Merrick Garland, the U.S. Secretary of the Navy, to make sure that the limits that Merrick Garland put on these awards, 25% and 20% for filing, is going to happen?
I'm happy to
The
look
answer is, the answer to my question is yes.
I'm happy to look at it, sir. Yes, sir.
Why don't you just be the witness?
All right, well, I just might be a no on that.
Sir,
You and I need to meet, seriously, Lieutenant Colonel.
I'd be eager to meet with you,
All
sir.
right, Mr. Brown, Captain Brown, I have an innovative idea I want to work with you on. The VA recently did a grant program for the Veterans Cemetery program. Alaska, we have more veterans per capita than any state in the country, and this was one of the first that we had gotten ever. So it was in Fairbanks, in the interior part of our state, which was great, so I really appreciate that happening. We have a whole bunch of small Alaska Native communities throughout the state. Over 230 villages in Alaska are not even connected by roads. So these are small little villages, hundreds and hundreds of them in Alaska. Alaska Natives serve at higher rates in the military than any other ethnic group in the country. So you go to these villages, there's so many veterans, they're so patriotic. Can you work with me in this committee on maybe, and I'm sure it'll matter in other rural communities like Maine or, Arizona, to work with this committee on maybe an idea of they don't have to be giant VA cemeteries, but maybe just smaller plots of land that can honor the service of these Native Americans who serve at very high rates in the military in small villages that usually don't have any kind of cemetery at all honoring their veterans.
Senator, I'd love to follow up with you, learn more about Alaska's natives' needs specifically, and happy to have that discussion.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome, Senator Sullivan. Senator King.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This isn't a normal confirmation hearing. We're talking about these three nominees, but the context is that the VA is going through a tremendous amount of what I consider damage while we're playing near my God to thee on the deck of the Titanic. We had firings. We've had 2,400 firings so far. One of the most offensive things about these firings, Mr. Chairman, is that apparently most of the letters that the folks got cited performance issues with no basis whatsoever. That's not good management. It's not fair to those individuals, and I know it's been enormously problematic for those individuals. And then we received the idea that we're going to fire 83,000 people over the next 6 or 8 months. But this committee has had no plan whatsoever. Your testimony, Mr. Baehr, is, I don't know about the plan. Neither do we. And we should. We've had no communication that I know of defining what the plan is going to be, how those people are going to be chosen, what the impacts will be. And by the way, it's an arbitrary number. They said we're going to return the VA to the staff that it had in 2019. That's just out of the blue. Why not 2020? Why not 2015? It's an arbitrary number that's not based upon performance or need or analysis whatsoever. And in fact, 7 laws have been passed since 2019, one of which is a PACT Act, which requires enormous additional staff in order to administer it properly, as Senator Tillis indicated. And we've got, and then we've got the secretary telling us that this is going to produce better service. I don't think that passes the straight face test. So my problem with these nominees is nothing to do with their qualifications or their history. In fact, Mr. Baehr has impeccable educational qualifications. Went to the same college and law school that I did. But a call not answered is a denial of benefits. A veteran who has to wait months for an appointment is a denial of benefits. And it can be a death sentence. And then there's the issue of the canceled contracts. We've had, the secretary issued a little video proudly saying we've canceled 600 contracts and saved so much money. That was about a month ago, and we still don't know what the contracts are. The committee doesn't know what the contracts are. What are they for? Are they for toilet paper, or are they for counseling? Are they for the kinds of services that veterans need? We don't know that. And so my belief here is today, and again, it doesn't have to do with the qualifications of these 3 nominees, but we ought to stop talking about nominees at this department until the department starts telling us what they're going to do and justifying it in terms of service to the veterans. It's easy to say we won't disturb the service to the veterans. We were all at a large hearing with the DAV about 2 or 3 weeks ago. We had 200 or 300 people in the audience, and I read the quote from the secretary saying this won't affect veterans, service to veterans whatsoever, and there was a groan throughout the room. They know damn well it's not going to affect. You cannot fire a fifth of the workforce of a major agency and expect to not have some effect on the delivery of services. It just, as I said, it doesn't pass the straight face test. So I understand, Mr. Chairman, that our role is to talk about our nominees and all of those kinds of things, but I think we're doing a disservice to the VA to be even talking about nominees. And my final problem, and these poor 2 fellows came to my office, and I told them when they walked in I wasn't going to vote for them. And the reason is I voted for Secretary Collins. And he made a lot of representations about the VA, and he was going to be open to the committee and responsive and everything else. And I feel burned by that vote because the first thing I got was 2,400 firings, ostensibly for performance, which everybody knows wasn't true. And then the 83,000, by the way, it's 83,000, not 80,000, if you go back to 2019. And the lack of communication with this committee about these plans, I just cannot. I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, I can't support these nominees. Thank you for your time, and I do appreciate the service that each of you have rendered to the country. I completely understand that, and I want to reiterate that my comments are not directed at you, but are directed at what I think is a diminution of service to our veterans that they absolutely don't deserve. And I guess I should mention that of those 83,000, undoubtedly about 30,000 will be veterans themselves. Thank you for your service. You're fired. That's no way to run the Veterans Administration. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
King, thank you. Senator Roanoke.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome to each of you. And yes, these are not normal times. You all are being dropped into a situation that has to do with not only the Veterans Administration, but just about every other administration agency in a government. And so what's happening to every department as mass firings not based on performance or anything else for that matter. Let me just start with the two questions I ask of every nominee on any of the committees on which I sit, and these questions has to do with some level of ascertaining the fitness of all of you to serve, and I will start with Captain Brown, and we'll go right down the line. Since you became a legal adult, have you ever made unwanted requests for sexual favors or committed any verbal or physical harassment or assault of a sexual nature?
No, Senator.
No, Senator.
No, Senator.
Have you ever faced discipline or entered into a settlement relating to this kind of conduct?
No, Senator.
No, Senator.
You've been asked a lot about the impact of these staffing cuts, and it's astounding to know that not only have 2,400 employees of VA, including probably many veterans, but another 80,000 to come. Do any of you know what the plans are on firing 83,000 more people at the VA? Have any of you been apprised of any plans? And I would say probably Mr. Topping, you should know about what you're going to be facing. Would you like to make a comment? Do you know anything about how the VA is going to fire 83,000 more people?
So, Senator, again, I'm not at VA, and I haven't been part of these conversations.
Is your mic on?
Yes, ma'am. I'll come closer. I've not been at VA. I've not been part of these conversations. What I know is from what I know that's publicly available is that the Secretary has started with a baseline, and it's the 2015 398,000 employees as a baseline. He wants to pull the data. He wants to look at what the requirements are. He wants leadership input, and then he's going to make determinations about how to most efficiently and effectively structure VA such that it does not negatively impact and perhaps enhances care and benefits available to veterans.
First of all, there is a way that you're supposed to go about riffing and firing, and I suppose this is a question for Mr. Is it Baehr?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So you're going to be the general counsel for the VA, and would you think that firing 1,400 people to start 2,400 without any legal basis, just to say, oh, well, they're being let go because of performance, which is not, there's no evidence of that, and then another 80,000? As the person who would be the general counsel, how would you advise the VA to go about firing 83,000 people?
If confirmed, I would advise the Secretary under the requirements of Title V and Title 38. Advise him of the best legal counsel I can. Those particular issues are before the courts presently and headed to the Supreme Court. And I can't personally.
Well, you're supposed to have a plan, right? A RIF plan before you just start firing people wholesale? Is that what you would? In fact, that's what the courts are demanding. Not only have the courts told all of the administration agencies, you have to rehire everybody. Many of them are being rehired and placed on administrative leave. So it's a mess. It's chaos. And what's happening is tremendous fear, not just in VA. And I don't know how you can fire close to 90,000 or so people at a time when there are even more veterans needing VA services. How all of that is even supposed to mesh or make sense. It does not. So for Mr. Topping, you're going to be the CFO, Chief Financial Officers. Does it make a lot of sense that, first of all, you fire all these people, and then you're told by courts you have to rehire them, and then they're rehired and put on admin leave? Does it make sense that we're having to pay people to not be doing their jobs?
Senator, I'm not at VA. We will comply with the law, and if
you know what? All of you say that, comply with the law, which is the law as interpreted by President Trump, because he thought it was okay to fire thousands of federal employees, leading to court lawsuits, leading to restraining orders, leading to courts telling you all you have to rehire everybody. One more question for you, Mr. Topping. Think about it. There was a letter that went to a lot of people, the fork in the road letter, and I am told that that letter led to a number of people from the VA who are taking that early retirement, whatever you want to call it, and then the council at the VA said, in following up on the people who took this offer, which I question the legality of, Now, the council has sent a letter to all the people in VA who signed on to this, that the VA is going to be responsible for paying them to not work until September. Does that make a lot of sense to you? Like, who told the council to obligate the VA to pay people for not doing anything until September? Does that
Senator,
make sense to you?
If confirmed as CFO, I will ensure that VA meets its financial commitments, including those court orders, and you've got my commitment to that.
So you think it's okay that the VA has obligated itself to pay all these people who, I don't even know how many people in VA took the fork in the road, so-called offer, it's okay to pay them to sit there doing nothing for till September?
Senator,
That's what you're saying? That's what you're saying, meeting VA's obligation?
As the CFO, I will ensure that the VA is adequately funded and financed to meet its mission, and if that's a requirement, we'll meet it.
Mr. Baehr, just if I can, well, do you think that was okay for the legal counsel at VA to send all these letters to the people who took the fork in the road offer that obligates the VA to pay up?
I can't comment on anything that's in active litigation, Senator.
Makes little sense to me. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Before we move on, Mr. Topping, do you want to answer verbally the question that Senator Hirono asked you that I think the other two witnesses answered, but you did not because you didn't have the moment to do it?
And Senator, no.
The answer to your question about whether any proceedings in regard to sexual assault, et cetera, he was ready to answer you, but it didn't come out of his mouth. And
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I want Senator Hirono and the rest of us to know that, but I also wouldn't want a record in your file that left that question unanswered.
I appreciate that. Thank
You're
you,
welcome. Senator Gallego.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And, bears repeating, we aren't dealing in normal times. And, to the chagrin of many of my people in my party, I've been very supportive of a lot of the president's nominee. I think only one other senator actually has voted for more Republican nominees. And I did it because in a spirit of bipartisanship, with the idea that, we have to make sure that we're working together, trying to send a message to the American public. And, and I've even thought the same thing when I voted for Administrator Collins, and we served together in the House of Representatives. And I still even held out hope when I first heard the rumors of cuts of 83,000, even talking to some of the guys that I served with, when they were talking to me about this, I told them, well, that's just insane. No one would ever do that, because, I've been, here in Congress and even using the VA starting, back when I got back from Iraq in 2006. And the only thing I remember is that we always needed more people. And the Phoenix VA in particular, where I belong, has always needed more people. We've had, horrible stories at that VA of people dying without treatment, of administrators, hospital administrators, faking lists to make sure it looks like, that they're actually moving through, and, just on and on, stories and stories. And then this weekend, I was told, and it was proven to be true, that the Phoenix VA has to get rid of 15% of its staff by June. And I'm not asking you guys any questions. It's not fair to put you under it, so I'm not going to ask you any questions. I don't think it's fair for me to make you comment on something you're not responsible for. This is not at all directed at you. It's just more to the general public here. But the idea that you're going to be able to cut 15% from the Phoenix VA by June, and it's not going to affect services, it's not just laughable, it's sinful. We have so many men and women right now that are returning to this country and are now seeking services. Some of them as soon as they get here, some of them later in life. I finally got back in 2016. We have men and women that we encouraged to go and sign up for the burn pit registry, that, to take advantage of the PAC Act, that we told them come to the VA, and now they're going to come, they're going to find that someone's not going to be answering their phone calls. They're going to have later meetings. They're not going to be able to have some of the claims that they need disputed fast enough. I've heard of veterans now that have to do their PTSD therapy in open-air cubicles. For us that have PTSD, we know how sensitive it is to be talking about what you went through, what you're going through, and when you have to expose your vulnerabilities, and now you have to do this in open air because, again, we're having these cuts, these arbitrary cuts. And, I'm faced as a new senator, what can I do? Well, the first thing I try to do is I try to vote for a guy that I thought was going to be logical and protect veterans, and he didn't. And so now, the only thing I have power to do is to hold all the nominations for any veterans moving forward, any VA appointees moving forward. Because 83,000 VA employees getting cut means 83,000 opportunities that we're going to miss probably helping some of these veterans. And I can't live with that on my conscience, knowing that there are men and women that are probably not going to get their phone calls answered when they're at a veteran crisis hotline, or they're going to have to wait a little longer to get that surgery, or they're not going to be able to feel comfortable going to the VA. And what is the message that we're sending to all the future employees? Before this year, we had been telling everybody that we need to keep expanding and hiring more people to meet the demand, and now we're firing a lot of these men and women, and we're not even being gentle about it. We're saying, you're out. Here's your last paycheck. Good luck. Here's your health insurance. You're off your health insurance. You're done. And when we go to recruit new men and women to come and work for the VA, when they could have competitive salaries somewhere else, how are we going to get them back? How can we tell that therapist that could probably go into private practice and make a lot more money, come and work for us, but at any point we could arbitrarily kick you out? And by the way, to get around our laws, our employment laws, we're going to say that you actually perform poorly, and well, good luck with that, and who knows if that's going to affect you financially in the future. How are we going to recruit the doctors, the specialists, to come work for us if at any point they're not going to even have the support staff to do this? So I can't vote for any nominee, and not only can I not vote for any more nominees, I need to do everything I can to hold as many nominees as possible until we stop this, until I can prove to the veterans that I serve with, the veterans that I serve with, the veterans that I represent now in Arizona, all over the country, that this is not going to hurt them. This is not going to affect them, because I can't prove that. And whatever power I have to protect veterans, I'm going to do that. And I hope in the end we can all find ourselves in a better situation where we can affirmatively say that our veterans are being taken care of, then we could vote for all of y'all in to help them out. But at that point, that moment doesn't exist. So, Mr. Chairman, my ranking member, and to nominees, I apologize, but I'm still going to stick with my hold on all the nominees until I know for a fact that our veterans are going to be at least held harmless through these cuts. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Gager, the anticipation is that the committee will have a markup an executive session in the next week before the end of the April recess to consider these three nominees. But assuming that they are passed or if they are approved by the committee, we understand there's a hold until that's lifted. I'm not intending to have a second round of questions. Senator Blumenthal has something he wants to ask or clean up or clear up.
Yeah, I first of all, as I mentioned earlier, I've joined Senator Gallego's hold, and I appreciate the chairman adopting the procedure that he's outlined. Let me ask just a couple more questions of the nominees. First of all, Mr. Brown, as you may know, the VA Secretary has canceled apparently 875 VA contracts, many of them dealing with service-disabled, veteran-owned small businesses. There are 243 that would be affected, and an additional 254 veteran-owned small business vendors. You led a service-disabled, veteran-owned small business yourself that worked with the VA. I wonder if you give us your views on these cancellations of contracts and how they'll impact those small businesses.
Thank you, Senator. As a former owner of a SDVOSB, I was proud to to be able to provide those critical services to the VA. What I can tell you sitting here before you today is I don't know what those companies and what those services or goods that they deliver are. And so without that knowledge, I can't tell you exactly what impact it would have on those businesses.
Will you commit to reviewing them?
Senator, I'm happy to review them.
And will you report back to the committee on what you find?
Yes, Senator.
Let me ask you also, a number of veteran cemeteries across the country, including a state veteran cemetery in Middletown, Connecticut, essentially are running out of space in coming years. I understand that the state of Connecticut hasn't been able to secure additional property that would be needed for a VA grant award. I'd like your commitment that you'll work with me and my staff to assure that the Connecticut State Veterans Cemetery in Middletown has options to expand.
Senator, I'm happy to have those discussions with you, but I know that there will probably be some local jurisdiction issues that are outside of my control. But again, the mission of the NCA is to ensure that all veterans have access to these honors, and where we have a need for expansion, that's part of what, if I'm confirmed, I'll have oversight on, and I look forward to working with you on that.
In Connecticut and elsewhere, local issues of land use may be beyond your direct control, but you could have a substantial influence insofar as grants and other action by the VA are involved. So I'd like your commitment that in Connecticut and elsewhere, you will use your authority and influence to provide the necessary land for expansion.
Senator, look, again, the mission is very important to me as someone who's lost soldiers, my own brother, and so I will be committed to this mission. My first request of use of influence, if confirmed, is to ask this body to ensure that NCA is properly funded for expansion of these cemeteries. From previous testimony from General Quinn, I understand that there's quite a backlog beyond Connecticut where there's a lot of necessity for expansion, or at least request for expansion. And I hope that the Congress will recognize the importance of this sacred mission and will appropriate that accordingly.
Mr. Baehr, as you know, last week, President Trump issued an executive order ending collective bargaining at the VA, which would strip 80% of all VA employees, over 300,000 workers, of important labor protection and due process rights. The executive order appears likely to violate statutes and the Constitution. Have you an opinion on the legality of that executive order?
No, Senator, as I understand, that executive order is before the court in Texas as to whether that can occur or not. And just to clarify, obviously didn't get a chance to finish with Senator Sullivan. My focus is always on the veteran. It's always on the Marines, and certainly I focus on them first. And that was the answer I sought to give, which is that veterans will always be first. And so our efforts at VA will always be towards that. I would never choose lawyers or any other group of people over our veterans. And I'd
like you to give me a written response on that question of the legality of that executive order. Will you do it?
Well, respectfully, sir, I don't think it's proper for me to opine on the legality of an order that's before the court right now.
Well, you could articulate a position either justifying or challenging the legality of that executive order. You're going to be representing the VA. You should have a view on it.
Because I'm going to be, if confirmed, if blessed to be confirmed, because I would be representing the department, I think it'd be improper for me to provide a personal opinion on active litigation matters.
Mr. Topping, is there anything more that you would like to add to the responses that you've provided so far on your tenure as CEO of Cardinal Innovations Healthcare Solutions?
Senator, I think my record speaks for itself, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Did you mention that there's litigation?
There was substantial litigation.
Has it been concluded?
All the litigation filed against my company and I has been dismissed.
Is there any other litigation that's still pending?
I have a defensive litigation that I filed that is still pending.
And what is the status of that litigation?
I won at the trial court. I won at the Court of Appeals. It was remanded by the Supreme Court. I won at the trial court last fall, and it's currently back at the Court of Appeals. And I'm confident I'll prevail.
Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
No good deed goes unpunished. Senator Banks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Brown, congratulations on your nomination to lead the National Cemetery Administration. You are an American hero and an inspiration to millions of veterans like myself and non-veterans alike. The NCA does great work. It is a model of an efficient federal agency. The NCA staff also have an excellent relationship with the Indiana Department of Veterans Affairs, and I look forward to carrying on that relationship with you at the helm. I wholeheartedly support your nomination. I know you will uphold NCA's exemplary reputation. Mr. Brown, there are 4 national cemeteries in my state in Indiana. The Woodlawn Cemetery in Terre Haute has been full for years. The columbarium at the Crown Hill Cemetery in Indianapolis and the New Albany National Cemetery accept cremations, but only the Marion National Cemetery is still open for burials. If confirmed, will you work with me to explore another burial option in Indiana?
Yes, Senator.
It's a great answer. Thank you for that. Mr. Brown, the New Albany National Cemetery and the 2 national cemeteries in Louisville, Kentucky are all closed to new burials. Do you think it could make sense to develop a new location serving southern Indiana and the Louisville area?
Senator, with respect, I don't know the exact geography of Indiana, but I can tell you that there are many requests, as I can tell from public testimony in the past, for expansion. As I believe from approximately a year ago, testimony by Undersecretary of Memorial Affairs Quinn, that there is a backlog of roughly 60 requests for expansion across the country. And the role of NCA is to try and prioritize where there are the funds to do that. I would love to see a situation where all of that backlog can be worked through, that we don't have veterans or representatives concerned about whether or not they're going to have honorable and proper burials within a close radius of their home. But that is something I need to work with Congress on.
I look forward to working with you on that. I've said many times before that we inspire the next generation to serve when we show respect for our previous generation. So I look forward to working with you to clear that backlog. Mr. Brown, I introduced the Ensuring Veterans Final Resting Place Act to make sure that veterans retain the right to be buried in VA national cemeteries, even if they receive a memorial urn or a plaque. Veterans are losing this right as the unintended consequence of an earlier law. If confirmed, will you work with me on that legislation to solve this problem before more veterans are impacted?
Senator, I'd love to learn more about that legislation, and happy to have that discussion.
The VA testified already in support of Representative Rudy Yackham's, also from Indiana's, House version of the bill last week, with the condition that passage should be subject to the availability of appropriations. It would cost about $20 million annually. That's a significant amount of money, but I think it's a worthy priority, again, to make sure that we honor our nation's heroes. Will you work with me to redirect some of the savings from eliminating waste and inefficiency through the VA to pay for that important priority?
Again, Senator, I don't know the details of this legislation. On the top view of it, it sounds like it's a noble mission, but I would like to learn more about it.
Got it. And we look forward to educating you more on the bill and why that's an important priority. Mr. Brown, you have seen many of the inner workings of the VA as a contractor supporting emergency preparedness. What did you observe about the department's operational problems, and how will you approach solving them?
It's a good question, Senator. as someone who was on the contract side of that, I didn't have a view into the VA's decision-making, but I can tell you that I'm excited for the leadership of Secretary Collins, his commitment to the veteran first, veteran care. And as a veteran who receives care and has for the last 13 years, my wife also receives care. In fact, this morning she's at the VA for an appointment. We're very interested as recipients of VA care as well, that the VA has this leadership that is focused on the mission.
Again, I've already praised the NCA. It's a well-run organization within the VA. From what you've learned so far, what have we learned from the best practices at the NCA that we can implement in other VA offices?
NCA does a fantastic job of customer service, a focus on the veteran customer, ensuring that last honor is received well. Again, this is something I hear from the Secretary that is a focus of his more broadly across the entire department. And I look forward to, if confirmed, working with NCA to continue that legacy and expect to see that legacy spread over to the rest of the VA.
Thank you. My time has expired.
Senator Slotkin.
Apologies for being late, just got off a plane. Congratulations on all your respective nominations and for some of the conversations we've had in my office. Mr. Brown is the Undersecretary of Memorial Affairs. You oversee really important places in Michigan. In particular, we have a big and growing veteran cemetery in Holly, Michigan, where I live, in my farm town. We just got an extension, and it is becoming quickly one of the biggest cemeteries in the entire country, which we're very proud of how we allow people to be buried with respect in the final phase of their life for them and their family. What I'm concerned about is there's the Veteran Cemetery Grants Program. So a big way that our cemeteries get money to do the development and the work that they need. And Michigan is one of the few states that doesn't have a VA grant-funded state veteran cemetery. We're trying to change that. Basically, I just was hoping that we can work together on expanding that program to all of the states is number one. But number two, I'm concerned that these are the types of programs that are being looked at right now for cuts, right? They're kind of below the radar. It's not veteran care, hospital care, directly in a medical setting. And I'm concerned that programs for cemeteries are going to be cut. So how are you going to address this? Since it seems like DOGE is coming for every agency, every department, they're looking through every couch cushion. How do you respond to cuts to programs that you would oversee?
Thank you, Senator, for the question. And I agree. This is a duty that we owe to our veterans. NCA fortunately has a terrific history of fulfilling this duty with honor and distinction. And if confirmed, I look forward to joining such an illustrious organization. With that being said, I think that the work that I would do would be within the VA, but also with Congress to ensure that there are the funds available for this. I've mentioned before that in looking at previous testimony, just over a year ago, General Quinn sat here and said that there's approximately 60 requests for expansions across the country at any given time, with many of those being 5 years old and waiting. And so one of the ways that we can ensure that these sorts of expansion projects are able to be fulfilled is that Congress appropriate the money.
Well, first, the president, to be clear, constitutionally, the president has to ask for it. So we'll look forward to seeing those line items in your budget, in President Trump's budget that he's about to present. He'll have every opportunity, as every president does, to present a budget, and I'll be looking to see if he's actually fully funding the veterans programs. What we're seeing right now, we just had Secretary Collins in my state this week, was kind of tap dancing on threats to cut 70 to 80,000 people from the VA. We've seen cuts already to the VA that are affecting things like answering phones and processing claims. I had a veterans roundtable 2 weeks ago when we were home, and these are not Democrats, just to be clear. Like, this was a nonpartisan event. And they're like, look, I understand that we're not cutting the hospitals, but if you're cutting the person who does the approval of their claim and they have to wait 2 years before they can schedule an appointment for something, it is cutting access to care. It isn't just the hospitals. So I'm looking forward to the president's budget. We're going to go into the details, and so should every VSO and every veteran service or veteran organization. The president has the opportunity to ask for that money. It can't be that Congress just decides. We have to see where the president lies on this. So we'll see. Mr. Topping, on general counsel matters, do you believe in impoundment? Do you believe that if this body appropriates money, Congress appropriates money, as Mr. Brown is saying, that lawyers and people at OMB can decide simply not to spend it on the things that this committee and this chairman chooses?
Senator, I'm aware that that is both a political and legal issue. I'm aware that there's litigation around that. If confirmed as CFO, I will appropriate the funding as directed by the Congress and ensure the agency manages it efficiently.
Okay, I hope so. I mean, I hope on veterans issues that should be a no-brainer, that if we appropriate it under this chairman and it's his stamp of approval, that it gets spent on the things that we appropriated for. Otherwise, what are we doing here? I mean, in Congress, what are we doing? So in any case, looking forward to seeing all of you guys in office, and thank you for your work.
Senator Slotkin, thank you. I want to ask one more question. Oh, let me make sure. Senator Bozeman? Okay. Senator Bozeman.
Again, I also apologize for being late. I had to be in another hearing helping with this. So I don't have any questions. I had the opportunity to visit with the panel at length in my office. We had a great discussion, and I just want to thank all of you for your willingness to serve. You're outstanding individuals. You're in a situation where you could do very well in the private sector. You've chosen to be willing to serve at the VA, and I think it is an act of service. So we appreciate that and look forward to helping you in any way we can. Take care of our veterans. That's really what it's all about, and that's what this committee is all about. So thank you, Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member.
Senator Bozeman chairs the Milcon VA Appropriations Subcommittee, so you need to pay special attention to him and develop a close working relationship. Let me ask one final question, then we'll conclude the hearing. Last week, the VA Inspector General issued a report detailing the circumstances surrounding a multiple billion-dollar shortfall at Veterans Health Administration's fiscal year 2025 budget. The IG found that the VA knew well before the fiscal year of 2025 request was complete that the VHA needed more money, yet the OMB and VA leaders chose not to seek a funding increase until after Congressional Appropriations Committee had done their work and set the fiscal year 25 funding levels across the government. We expected that. Turned out to be true, according to the Inspector General, and its poor way of doing business. And I want you, Mr. Topping, to make any comments that you will about how that wouldn't happen under the administration. In other words, the VA determined they needed more money, failed to tell Congress, let us reach our agreement on funding levels across 12 appropriation bills, knowing that they had a shortfall, and only after we completed our appropriations top-line numbers were we then informed of the problem. We responded, incidentally, provided more money, only to be told then by the VA that they asked for too much money and they didn't need that much. Mr. Topping, how would you avoid that?
Senator, thank you for the easiest question of the day. I read the OIG reports. I spent the last 6 years in the private sector working for former VA Secretary Tony Principi. And I can only imagine if I had said to Secretary Principi, my numbers are 12, 6, 3, 0. The Secretary would have told me the numbers need to be right, the numbers need to be right, and we'll get them right. There are different cost drivers between VBA and VHA. It's eligibility and claims volume, VBA. It's tougher on VHA. You've got med management utilization, community care claims lag. Having said that, I think the priorities that I would bring as CFO in financial reporting, forecasting capabilities, and the right tools, plus the right structure that drives accountability, Senator, if confirmed as CFO, we're going to get the numbers right.
Thank you. That would be an improvement. I'm going to conclude the hearing, although this gives me the opportunity to once again suggest that having an Inspector General back at the Department of Veterans Affairs would be very valuable and useful. It is the Inspector General who provided us with this information, other valuable information, and as we, as a committee, try to weed out any inefficiencies and fraud or waste, it's the Inspector General who is one of our greatest allies. So it would be great for an Inspector General to be back in his or her position at the Department of Veterans Affairs.
Mr. Chairman?
Senator Blumenthal.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to say that I strongly join in that view, and my hope is that Inspector General Mike Missel, who was my guest at the State of the Union, as a matter of fact, and is well known to members of this committee for his excellent work as Inspector General, would be an appropriate person to return to that role. Thank you.
Senator Blumenthal, thank you. There are no other questions. I want to thank our committee members for their presence and interest in visiting with our witnesses today. I thank our witnesses for their testimony, for their past service, and for their willingness to serve other veterans in the capacity for which they have been nominated. Any member of this committee who would like to send questions for the record to one of the nominees should do so as soon as possible and no later than noon tomorrow. We appreciate the timely response that you then can provide as we intend to take the committee intends to take up these nominations in committee before the beginning of the April recess. With that, the hearing is adjourned. Thank you very much.